water, earth, fire, air. Avatar Legends, coming soon to Tabletop Misfits.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the tavern. I am your wonderful host, and tonight I think I finally have figured out exactly how the adventures are going to start. And it's always going to start in a place known as Mythweaver's Respite. And this is an inn that comes out of the blue when characters walk through the door. So what we're going to do tonight, and I'm going to throw Andrew a couple curveballs tonight that I didn't tell him about because that's what DMs do, is before we do anything, let me get over two things. First things first is I'm going to let Andrew kind of give you a brief elevator speech of who he is. And then we're going to talk about our sponsor for tonight, and then we're going to jump in the adventure. So shoot it, Andy.
Hey everyone, all you beautiful nerds out there in the interwebs. My name is Andy. I go by Mr. Dandy DM on TikTok and on all the fun socials, YouTube, Instagram, etc. I am a dungeon master, and I also play Five, who is a Warforged druid in the show Fables of Fendrea, a mini-series through Cast Party D&D. And you can find that podcast on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you listen to your podcasts. But yeah, really psyched to be here. Really psyched to see what you guys got going on. And yeah, let's do this thing.
All right. And before we start, the reason I'm wearing the shirt tonight, partially because St. Patty's Day is this weekend. The other reason is working with GUI Cube has been so amazing, and I want to give them a shout out. They just launched their newest Kickstarter called Blood of the Con. It has hit over 40,000. The goal was 10. So we're super excited, and that's going to give extra maps. So people who don't understand what GUI Cube does, they're an all-encompassing campaign guide. This comes with a campaign, it comes with character artwork, it comes with scene artwork, it comes with item cards, it comes with inspiration card. All these different things are boxed into a small box that is all contained for a GM to be able to run a game without having to really prep as much as they have to on a normal basis. But the new Kickstarter is out, so go check them out over on Kickstarter. Help them get to 50K so we can get even another map. And all these stretch goals just keep going higher and higher. It's ridiculous. So yeah. All right. So now that I've come up with exactly how I'm going to run every single episode this way forward with our guest, because I think it's great. What we're going to do is we're going to step into your world. So especially since you've been running a world now, as we were talking, for almost 3 years, the character that you're bringing tonight, I don't want you to give any description until you walk through the door, but where is your character at currently where you are?
Okay, so this is a little bit of the curveball. I was going to talk about, or I was going to bring Five, but Five belongs in a different universe. Five, okay. The Warforged druid I play on Fables, that's a different universe entirely. So I am totally capable, though, of bringing a newer character into this universe.
Go for it.
So I would definitely, because druid is very much a departure for me in terms of the class that I main, I'm very much kind of like the stereotypical fighter character. I never play humans. Humans are just, I'm a human in real life, so I may as well just play something else. But yeah, I tend to do martial characters a lot, and so I would be a fighter character, kind of the utility, like very much good with all weapons. In terms of the world that I created, is it's based in this world called Odromia, and it is within the kingdom of Nimrion. And Nimrion has this capital city known as Ashkelon. And what I've done for a lot of the different mini campaigns and one shots that I've run is I've run it's sort of all centered and focused around the fall of Ashkelon. Like, this is a depending on what character level you are, and what time period you're inserted into Ashkelon, there are certain events that happen or are happening when you are inserted.
Fantastic.
So, but
so
Ashkelon,
your character right now is in Ashkelon right now. Okay. Where would be somewhere that this character would be heading right now?
Well, typically I usually, with a fighter, I would probably go towards Ooh, if they're just entering the city, if they're entering by sea, they would enter the Merkden docks. And the Merkden docks are very much the sort of it's an industry area. Like things are offloaded from the docks or from the ships that enter Ashkelon, and they are then brought into the Salt Fort. The Salt Fort is a mercantile crafting district. It's sort of the it's where all the economy takes place in the city. But for this character's kind of, likes to live on the wild side. He would definitely be going into the red light district of the city, known as the Shadow Ford.
All right. So as you walk into the Shadow Ford and you take your steps through the city or through the streets, and something catches your eye, almost like a glint out of the corner. You turn, and the first doorknob you reach for, when you open it, you're greeted by a soft sound of music. And inside, you can see a fully woodened out tavern with velvet red seating and a giant oak bar in the front, and this kind of larger than life grizzled dwarven man sitting there with his cleaning a cup, and he's got a towel thrown over his shoulder, and he goes, "Welcome to Mythweaver's Respite. Glad for it. Seems to be destiny that you have shown up. Take a seat, have a drink, and tell a tale." So as you walk in, you sit down, and who do we see?
You see Klangorn. He is a tiefling fighter who looks to be he's a red tiefling with large black horns that curl around. He is wearing leather armor. He smells of sulfur and just sweat, as he has been traveling for better part of a month, making his way up through the Peshium wildlands, finally getting down all the way to, hold on.
Let me pull up maps.
I'm remembering my map. Hold on one second. It's the going down from the Peshium wildlands through the Midney Plateau and making his way finally down through the dunes to Ashkelon.
So he's been on a heavy travel these last couple of months.
Oh yeah, he is definitely, Klangorn is definitely exhausted at this point, but he is happy to finally be within fingertips reach of a good drink.
Which you're immediately, just by your entering, you're immediately given a very heavy, thick ale from the bar, or from behind the bar. And he looks at you, and he takes a glance, and he glances over your armor, and your look in your eye of exhaustion. Says, "I've not ever seen someone so down on their luck. Seems you've been working hard and traveling far. One thing that we love to do here at the Respite is tell tales. So what tale will earn you this drink?"
Klangorn rolls his eyes just slightly, not overly annoyed, but he is very tired, and he has taken the first sip of his drink, and he's thinking like, "Oh, I really don't have much in the way of coin. I wish I should have done a job in the city before I came here."
Oh no, coin does not earn anything here. It's all about the tale.
Very well. I'll tell you a tale that would curl your toes and freeze your blood. I I was in the Peshium Wildlands. If you've not been there, then you know that it is a very dark and dangerous place, full of jungles and shadows. Not many people go in, and even fewer go in and come out. And I so happened to be a part of a treasure hunting group. We were going to investigate some of the temples that are rumored to be in the Peshium Wildlands. And it was during this expedition that we happened upon, I don't know what they're called, but they seem to be part serpent and part human almost. It was bizarre. But they were none too kind to myself or my lot. And I was the only one to make it out, while the rest of my group, they were all flayed alive and left hanging in the jungle as a warning to anyone else who might enter. So yes, friend, those who wander the Peshium Wildlands do so at their own risk. I'm not going back there, not for all the money in Nimrion. Does that earn a drink?
It definitely does. A drink for not only yourself, but for your comrades. And he uncorks a a hidden bottle underneath the bar, a thin, auburn-colored glass, and you hear the cork pop as he grabs a small glass, slides it to you, and you pours in what looks almost like water, completely clear, not a single speck of any sort of sediment inside. He says, "This will take your fear, your troubles away just a little." And he slides it and places it next to your glass.
Klangorn just looks at the ale and this nice drink right here, and he downs the one. I guess it's a shot.
Yep.
So a shot and a brew, and just tosses it back, and then this is all done in 2 gulps, basically.
All right. So before you take that first shot, almost as if in a blink of an eye, you just minusculely see the inside of the shot. And that shot is going to have every single person's name that you lost written out in almost like calligraphy in a second. Who all was lost?
Finn, Occam, Sybil, Lance, and Gregory.
And as you take that shot, a moment of respite comes to you, a moment of relaxation, as you feel that you are honoring each and every one of them by telling their tale. And then you you drink the rest of the ale. And he gives you a smile. He says, "Not only does that earn a drink, that earns a night's stay. Get your rest, my friend. I'm sure you'll have many tales to be told." And this is where our adventure will end. Now, we're not done listening to Claiborne. We're going to learn a little bit more about him, but this is where our actual adventure will end. So let's hear some stuff about this character, because I'm now excited, and I love these RPs. They're so much fun. You said he's a martial character. What class are we? Are we working straight fighter?
Straight fighter.
Okay.
Yep, he's a fighter battle master.
Okay, battle master, fantastic. Yep. Does he? goals in life. Top goal of why he would be traveling.
So in the world of Nimrion, no surprise, but tieflings are looked upon with varying degrees of suspicion. Although the closer you get to Ashkelon, the more common they are, given the fact that Ashkelon is very much a cultural religious hub, and Ashkelon was originally just a religious center. The district that houses all of the temples and cathedrals devoted to the different gods is known as the Starry Nest district. Outside the city walls to the south is basically a district of the city. It's still part of Ashkelon, but it's outside the walls. It's called Kavathis, and Kavathis is very much it is a cultural hub for not only displaced peoples, but refugees, people that are non-human, tend to congregate in Kavathis because there's in the world of Adromia or Nimrion, in the kingdom of Nimrion, humans are the bad guys. They're not. Yeah,
they're not the good ones.
Yeah, they're not the good peoples. In fact, I've only ever had one person play a human in my campaign, and they're awesome. They're great. But it took them a while to gain the trust of their party.
So not only did it take the trust of the party, but I'm sure throughout the entirety of that adventure, that person has been struggling on all sorts of occasions.
Oh yeah. So Clegorn is definitely, I would say he is originally from Ashkelon.
Okay.
Mainly because just how tieflings move and operate and sort of congregate in popular locales. So Ashkelon would definitely make sense.
Awesome. Relatives, family, anybody still around?
No? He may have had a sister a long time ago, but he has since lost touch. They've gone. He's heard rumors that she might be a famous singer / performer in the Shadowford. Because while the Shadowford is the red light district, but it is also the entertainment district of the city. So, but he's never found any reason to sort of keep in touch with her.
Right.
But yeah, she's a singer in the Shadowford.
Awesome. Okay, so this is going to kind of dive into both me being a DM, but also I want to hear some of your aspects on this. And audience, this is a great time for you guys to chime in if you're still listening, to ask questions. What are questions that you want to know about a character when you're first building a campaign? And we do this in our Discord about every couple weeks. I'll put a notice out to ask people, and I've had some really good questions being asked. The one that I really like is, what does your character do when there's nobody else around? When it's just you and the character?
That is a fantastic question. I love that. What does my character do? So here's the thing, like, just sort of off the top of my head, like I can come up with a variety of things. I'm just sort of very much just thinking about that question and how it relates to my players currently, like thinking about what their responses would be. Like what would Boop's downtime look like?
Or what would their downtime look like when there's nobody else around? Are they still tense? Are they relaxed? Do they have a ritual that they have to do every evening? Like who are they when there's no one, there's no light, there's no limelight?
So I think that Clegorn, given his background and how he doesn't really have family, but he also is just like, when he isn't off on an expedition trying to, make it rich or, explore some hidden part of the continent, he's probably very much focused in just observing people. So coming into a place like, the name of the place that we're in right now?
The Mythweaver's Respite.
Yeah, coming into the Mythweaver's Respite, he would people watch, get his drink, and then he would people watch. And he would look for an opportunity to tell additional stories, but when no one else is around, he probably would like oil or sharpen his weapons.
Yeah.
And just talk to himself, honestly, because he's had to get very good and comfortable with his own inner voice.
And there's always this, and not everybody has it, and if you don't have it, it's fine, but what's the darkness? Why are we talking to ourselves? There's always there's got to be a reason why people become adventurers and fighters and things like this. What is Claiborne's reason?
He's not good at much else. Okay. Besides doing various adventuring things. Okay. Like he's not that accomplished. Beyond that, he is very much just, he's in for the thrill.
Okay, that's okay. So it's a thrill for him. It's not. There's no underlying meaning. It's not parents weren't killed randomly. It's the thrill of the fight. It's the intensity, the adrenaline pump. That kind of almost gladiatory. It almost sounds to a point. Yeah. It's the enjoyment of the fight itself, which is great. I mean, there's definitely a reason behind that. Now, I'm going to ask a question, and if it's a no, that's fine, but has the character actually ever been ran?
No. This is completely off the dome.
Oh, right, awesome. Now. Even better.
No, I'm using my DM skills to randomly come up with an NPC that I would actually love for my characters at some point, my players to meet, and they would interact with, but this is very much just sort of off the dome, like, yep, what's the character's name? Clegorn? Like, what's his class? He's a fighter, like, the characters I usually like to play. Yeah. What's his race? Tiefling, because it's always got to be a tiefling.
It's always got to be a tiefling. And I love the fact you didn't give it like the devil horns that stick up. It's the rolled ones,
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, and he's a red tiefling. He's not he's not blue. He's not purple. He's just red. He's from the lineage of Asmodeus may at one point have been his progenitor or something.
Right. Yeah. Depending on how your tieflings are built in your world. Yeah. If you're spinning it from a devil, Asmodeus is probably your closest for a red one.
Yeah.
But no, that's awesome. One thing I love about coming up with this idea that you just turn a doorknob and walk into this place is you're the only one there. So there's nobody around. It's you and the bartender, who seems to be this almost over the top character who has this omnipotence about him, and all he does is ask people for stories, and this is how the character was created. Now
he's an archfey in disguise.
Pretty much. I mean, if you could create an archfey that's a dwarf, it would definitely be exactly that.
No one would see that coming.
Yeah, no. But no, it's great. So fighter, thrill in the fight. I'm trying to come up with some other ideas. What are some things that you ask your players that you want information on when you're trying to get a campaign started?
Oh, I actually just had to do this. There's so something that I really love incorporating into my campaigns is elements of horror, and not that everything is like super heavy or dark. Yeah. There have been very heavy. There have been very heavy, dark moments in the campaign, but a lot of the time there are moments of light, just jovial moments that are had between players and NPCs. But something that I really love doing is incorporating elements of horror, and specifically psychological horror.
Okay.
And so I had to ask my players just recently, and it was a situation where I knew there were two people who were out, and I don't remember why they were out, but they weren't able to make the game. And I was like, okay, that's fine. That's 3 other people that are going to be able to be there. So I'm going to run it regardless. And then I went to those 3 people. I privately DM'd them, not in the the game Discord, but separately.
Right.
I said, hey, what is your character's greatest fear? And at this point, we've been playing for 3 years now. And so,
yeah, that's going to be probably a different aspect completely compared to somebody asking you that at the beginning.
Yeah. And so at this point, they know, like, all of them wrote fairly decent backstories. So it was very easy to sort of, when we first began, pick up things that I would be able to be like, okay, this person might be afraid of this. But since we've been adventuring for 3 years,
right,
what are they actually afraid of? What is their deepest fear? And so one of them said something to the effect of dying alone, or
like drop of the ball right there.
Yeah, it's like straight to the heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And then one of them said, not to get too much into their backstory, but they are of a lineage where they will at some point be asked to make a decision about taking a throne themselves. Okay. And right now they're very much on the fence. They don't want that responsibility, and they're also thinking like, or maybe I am the best choice. So they're afraid of making the wrong decision. That's their greatest fear. And I feel like the reason that question really works is because that is very human.
It is.
It's very relatable for someone, for you to ask, like, Andy, what's your greatest fear?
Right.
Anything happening to my family.
Right.
Like, so, like, legit, that is one of my worst fears right now.
No, I don't give a crap what happens to me.
Yeah, I know.
Specifically my boys, I would lose my mind. Like,
exactly.
I have four boys going from the age of 22 to 4, and I think if any of them did anything to the point where I would lose them, I would be completely crushed.
Yeah. I have 2 young kids, and so like I'm going to stop there because I know that if I continue to talk about this in this vein right now, it's going to get dark real fast.
It's going to get dark real quick. So the question I'm just going to stop right there. Stop while I'm ahead. Greatest fear, that the deepest fear.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you would know Cleghorn's just off the top of your head with him being a brand new character.
I mean, I think based off of the story that he told, or I just made up on the fly, I would say the Peshian Wildlands is my greatest fear.
Pretty scary right now.
The idea that that death can come from something unseen, can come from the shadows, that you don't even know that you're dead until your head is already on the floor while your body is just standing there.
Yeah. Oof. We my tech Eric, our first campaign that I ever ran for them, they went into something very similar to this jungle that you're talking about, and they found a Tabaxi tribe, and he was a halfling, and he tries to court a Tabaxi priestess, which I was like, you're 2 feet tall, she's 7 foot tall, it could work somehow, somewhere. But they went to an old abandoned monastery, and they met with what was considered the creatures known as the Yakoth. Now the Yakoth I created, they came from, and I can't remember the creature's name now, but they look like giant wildebeest, like very skinny bears, but they have long limbs and they can climb on things, and almost like monkeys, but with much more feralness to them. And I'll have to pull out the monsters manual here in a little bit and figure it out just for my own sanity. But these creatures were literally terrifying my party because of that reason. They came out of nowhere. They're crawling on the ceilings, and they're dropping down from the ceilings, and it was terrifying. And then but yeah, it was a good time. for the players. They actually really enjoy that adventure. Let's see here. Like I said, audience, if you've got questions, throw them out here because we're creating this character off the top. Now, Andy, I don't know if you saw something. I sent you in an email, and the people who have been here for a couple of weeks now know this trick. And it's not really a trick, but it's part of the deal. And this is where the audience gets a chance to participate. If you noticed in the chat room, it said, if you like what you're watching, please look at giving us a tip. Now, on Wednesday nights, our tips does not go back to Misfits. Our tips goes to our artist. If the guest or the audience wants to pay $25, that $25 ships immediately to our artist, and she will create Claygorn, and everybody in the channel right now will get a link to the Google Drive at the end of the episode, where you will be able to pick that up and bring that character's artwork into your own campaigns. So
Oh my God.
that's kind of part of the cool trick we do here. And you can see if you go to our social media, we've posted a couple pictures. Now, the reason we do that is because we've only been authorized to show so many in public format. Everything else is behind our Tabletop Misfits Patreon. We just dropped 3 more in there this afternoon. I dropped 3 more in. So I think we're up to 7 or 8 at this point.
Oh, okay.
But every guest loves the idea, and our artist has been putting some serious amounts of thought to each of these characters to really bring them alive. Our guest last week, Porthos, who was a goblin fighter who used a halberd to kind of hit and run things, was created, and that one will be going up later this week. So we've already seen it. The guest was great, loved it, but that's kind of a thank you and a benefit of being a guest here is when the character is created, you can actually get it created for you in artwork. So we'll talk more about that in a bit. Now, second portion of our show is where we get to find the insides and the inner workings of why this character is created and who's behind the pencil and paper. So this is where we get to find out kind of a little bit of an interview on you, Andy, is where you came from, how you got into Dungeons and Dragons, or TTRPGs in general. Mm-hmm. We know that there are thousands of other RPGs out there besides Dungeons and Dragons. It's just the one that most people know, and it's what we start with for many people. So yeah, give us a little bit about yourself, where and how you kind of fell into this world of fantasy and Dungeons and Dragons.
Sure. So I did not, when I first was introduced to TTRPGs, I did not start off in the D&D worlds. Okay. I was very much the sheltered Christian kid whose parents told him that Dungeons and Dragons was evil, or had, there was a satanic element. And this was all prior to me ever reading Lord of the Rings or Chronicles of Narnia. So I didn't have anything to come back and say, well, you know what? Okay. But what about all this stuff? So my first introduction to TTRPGs was Star Wars D20 through Wizards of the Coast. That was my very first TTRPG experience. And that really just blew my mind, because it was a known universe. Like, I grew up loving Star Wars, and I knew that I loved the idea of collaborative storytelling already, because I'm an actor, so I come from that background, and the idea of coming together around a table with a bunch of people who I call friends, and all of us having a character and interacting with a world that we're all familiar with. Like, all of us know, if we've watched, even if you just watched the movies, you know enough about the Star Wars universe to come in and be like, you know what? I'm an X-Wing pilot, and I am the best X-Wing pilot there ever has been. And I'm kind of like Han Solo, but if Han Solo also had Force powers and was Luke Skywalker. So
I feel like that is definitely a very kid-like mentality, right?
No, absolutely. And so that's sort of the energy that I sort of came in. And that was my first intro to TTRPGs. I was a part of 2 different campaigns when I was in, I think, junior high. And that was sort of it. Like, and that's what got the ball rolling. After that, I played an even earlier iteration of the Star Wars role-playing game where it was all the D6s. It was just D6s. Yep. That was it. I wish I could remember the exact name of that or the exact company that did that. But that was...
I've played that version too. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because that's the one with like all of the like so many aliens and you can just pull up the records of everything.
Yeah, it was extremely like well thought out. Like they pulled out from all of the different source materials, like all the different novels and everything, and they just included everything in there. And then back when they were making the newest versions, when Disney bought Lucasfilms or when Disney bought Star Wars, they were all like, and none of this is canon anymore. And so I basically had to look at my childhood just sort of like just getting exploded. And I was like, oh, okay. So that everything that I created in there is just like, it's not even a thing.
It's just yours now. It's just
else's. Yours, which is fine. It's fine. Yeah. I'm not bitter. I'm not mad about it. But yeah, then we went from the D6 versions to playing Fantasy Flight, the newest Star Wars TTRPG.
Yeah,
that was honestly that was like a big shift for me because I was very comfortable with like math and D20s and numbers, and then suddenly having to sort of switch that mentally to a symbols game where suddenly you have like certain number of advantages or a certain number of I can't even remember the terminology.
I've never played that version, so I've just seen
it's fun. It really is.
I've seen the idea with the symbols and all, and I was just like, I gotta go buy another set of dice. Like,
yeah, I just ended up downloading dice on the dice roller on my phone.
Right.
Yeah, and then that was it. And I was like, this is fine. But yeah, it's honestly a very fun version of the Star Wars universe in terms of TTRPGs. Then I played a bunch of D&D in college, but it was always like, yeah, we're going to get some friends together and it's going to be this campaign that we're going to do. And we ended up playing like 2 sessions and then somebody had class or somebody had, things to do, or just people like just flat out lost interest. And they were like, yeah, this was fun for like 2 sessions and then it just fizzled.
Right.
Not every campaign can last for 3 years. It's not a thing. In fact, that's sort of what brings me up till almost present day, about 3 years ago, pre-pandemic. I'm coming back from a work trip. I'm talking next to one of my coworkers, and she ends up mentioning that, Andy, you know what I haven't done in a long time? What? I haven't played Dungeons and Dragons. Okay. You want to play Dungeons and Dragons? Yeah. We should totally do that.
So hold on. I'm just gonna ask this question because this to me would be like the perfect excuse me? Because the idea that you're just sitting there talking, you're coming back from a business trip, and the first thing that comes out of this person's mouth at the end of it is, you know what I've not done in a while? Playing Dungeons and Dragons.
So to provide context for this conversation,
we're gonna need a little bit.
We were talking about music. And we were talking this is somebody who I'm friends with, but not everyone just talks about like music and the music that they listen to anymore, because it's all very we all have our own very different Spotify accounts and we all keep our music sort of private. And I was talking about the fact that I'm very much a metal metalcore rock fan, and I come to find out she is also that as well,
right?
And we were sort of talking about all of these bands that we have in common that we really love, and I think we ended up talking about Slipknot, and how when we first were listening to Slipknot, it was very much diametrically opposed to the upbringing that we had, because
and so
talking about how you're a fan of Slipknot, and then I think what the reason that we started talking about D&D is because we were talking about how our parents didn't like things that had satanic imagery.
Right.
And so that's how we got on the D&D conversation. And so, which if I'm thinking about it now, in terms of the context of that conversation, it was just basically us saying, like, how can we piss off our parents more? Even though at the time I'm totally 33 years old,
right,
when we had this conversation. And so ultimately it doesn't matter. But that being said, we both decided, let's figure out a way to play D&D. And without even figuring out who was DMing, we all sort of like got a group of people together. We all rolled up our characters, and then we sort of started looking at each other saying, okay, you're going to DM or you're going to DM. And I was the only person who had any experience DMing anything. And so I said, okay, I guess I can do it. I have. And so sort of running parallel with this whole event, I was in the process of writing, or beginning the process of writing, a fantasy novel. Okay. And I already had everything outlined in terms of the world, in terms of the world that I wanted to create. And so Nimrion and Odromia and the other kingdom in it, Sirastir, they all existed as a novel prior to this game. But then what ended up happening was, when these characters were created, I was like, I actually just want to see like people play in this world. I don't necessarily like, I like, if I want to, I'll write this book, but I really want to see how these characters play and like what happens and what stories they want to tell. Because that actually seems way more interesting to me than whatever I've got going on in my own head, which I actually think is just so very Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
Because through the process of DMing this now 3-year-long campaign, I have written sessions. I have written stuff. I've prepped. I've outlined things. I know what NPCs are and like are going to be there and what motivations are going to be in play. But ultimately, I would say 8 or 9 times out of 10, my players end up coming up with something that is way cooler than what I had originally thought. Not that my writing is for shit, but it's just like, yeah, I had a cool idea, but they've just made it so much better because they've bought into something.
Well, that's the seller, right? The best goal I can do as a game master is to, I hate to say market it, but you're marketing an idea to somebody that they buy into. And once they've bought in, their mind goes, and you're just like, I'm just going to sit back and run this roller coaster as far as it'll go. Because a lot of times you're absolutely right. They do. They come up with these unique, out of your mind ways of doing things, or coming up with unique adventures that you didn't think existed at first. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, wait, you mentioned this and you said this about your character. Well, I can tie this here and bring this back in 6 sessions to surprise you. I think that's the funness of being a dungeon master, truthfully, is to see your characters and to see your players get really excited about something to the point where they're buying the process.
Then the world becomes theirs. It's no longer yours.
It's no longer yours.
And I think that's honestly a beautiful moment.
Now if you really want to, when you go write your novel, if it ever becomes a thing, you have amazing stories to tell because you have all of your players.
That's so true.
And whatnot. And funny thing we talked about, we were talking about music and things like that, but one of the main reasons I really got into listening to Coheed and Cambria back 10 years ago, if you read their background, their first entire album is their campaign of Dungeons and Dragons.
I was heard that before.
Are you kidding me? Like, and it's
there are so many music artists today that are D&D players. were dungeon masters
and heavy D&D players, not like
like one
play
of my
every once in
favorite
a while.
examples from musical artists is Jared Way from the band My Chemical Romance.
Yep.
He is a massive D&D nerd.
Oh yeah.
And it really, like, when you think about that, when you look at the music and you sort of look at like all the aesthetics and the drama and the storytelling that happens with their music, you're like, oh yeah, that checks out.
Yeah. I mean, it goes extremely deep into a lot of it. And I think that's the interesting thing is it's now that Dungeons and Dragons and now that TTRPGs and the idea of a role-playing game outside of video games is so big in the industry and is so big in the world right now. You're seeing these kids that were playing in their during the 70s and 80s who are now A-list movie stars, A-list musicians, all them.
Mm-hmm.
And you're wondering then, okay, maybe there was something to this. You know, these people have been playing for years. I got a chance last year to sit and talk and meet with, and my brain is, of course, going to stop, but Shaggy from Scooby-Doo.
Geez.
Jeffrey Lillard. Lillard.
Matthew Lillard.
Matthew Lillard. I said Jeffrey. Yeah. No, Matthew. Matthew Lillard. I sat and talked with him in between him running the booth at Gen Con. And he is so passionate about Dungeons and Dragons. You know?
Yeah. Every interview I've ever seen with him is just he is
oozes.
so fantastic.
Yeah. But there's so many. I think that's the crazy thing about it is there's so many that are like that.
Someone who actually like really so during the pandemic,
right,
or prior to the pandemic, before I had started my own campaign, I was actually a part of a D&D podcast called Dice Patrol, which only went for about 7 or 8 episodes, if I'm remembering.
I'm really hoping that this was all about dogs and you were all saving the world.
No, but it is that would be funny. But we were part of this podcast, and then the pandemic hit, and I was having these conversations at the same time with the girl that I work with, and that was sort of happening all at the same time. But then this podcast ended up dying. But because of this podcast, my dungeon master introduced me to Critical Role and to Dimension 20.
Yep.
And the Adventure Zone. Yep. And not another D&D podcast. And so because I was sort of like inundated with all of this TTRPG Dungeons and Dragons stuff, that was when I encountered Joe Manganiello. Who, if people out there don't know who he is, he played a werewolf on True Blood. He was also he's also just a huge Dungeons and Dragons nerd. Just
goodness.
Look up Dungeons and Dragons, Joe Manganiello, Stephen Colbert. And he basically comes on Stephen Colbert's show and does this whole thing about his D&D apparel company, which is called Death Saves. Yeah.
Yep.
And watching this guy,
it is the raw, like the heavy metal of Dungeons and Dragons. If you've ever seen any of his apparel, like his apparel is how I wish I was, like in terms of like my aesthetic. Like that's it's like
very much who I am.
Old school, like 80s metal bands, and
but it applies to so many other time periods in like rock and roll.
Oh yeah.
But always with metal being at the forefront.
Yeah.
Like I could picture the same aesthetic on like a metalcore band that's out today.
Oh yeah, definitely 100%. I'm surprised we don't have a metal band called Beholder. Like, I just don't know why there's not one yet.
Actually, that sounds pretty dope. I wish I played an instrument.
I don't play anything. So we put a whole band together real quick.
Yeah. The Beholders, or just Beholder. Beholder would be pretty dope.
And just have a giant Beholder just drop from the ceiling every time during the concert.
Yeah.
It was great. and then connect all the. Now I'm doing like pyrotechnics, and get all the lights to shoot off on all the eyes. And they're just kind of like a light show.
Oh yeah,
on.
and suddenly it's metalcore meets industrial core. Shit, that sounds awesome.
It's like now I need to be like, do I run this as a show, or do I run this as do I go find all the people who can play music, or do I just write a podcast on this and have all the players in as like crazy metalheads?
Well, it's funny because like as a part of my work on Fables of Andrea, the guy who does all of the sound engineering and recording and all of the editing for he's also a producer for Fables of Andrea and Cast Party. His name's Ryan McManus, and he's actually was pre-pandemic part of this metalcore rock band called, I believe it's called Lions for Lambs, and he introduced me to so much metal during my time playing this character on this podcast. One of the bands that he introduced me to, which I think I have not stopped listening to them for like almost 6 months now. Like they're constantly on my playlists when I'm either at the gym or I'm doing running or whatever, or I'm prepping a D&D session, and it's Motionless in White.
Okay,
and
I've heard of them.
Yeah, and their most recent album, Soundtrack to the End of the World, or Soundtrack for the End of the World, is just like it has so much, in my mind, so much apocalyptic D&D imagery, and their aesthetic is just like chef's kiss. It's brilliant.
It's beautiful.
So yeah, everyone give them a.
Yeah.
So this whole session show is a plug for Motionless in White. Go see them in concert when they're back in the States.
No, this is the one. So this is funny because we started this show as a way to just talk Dungeons and Dragons, and it's grown into this amazing thing where we're creating characters and we're doing all that. But it's always based on the tavern feel that things can change immediately. So this is where we go down the rabbit hole of music and the artist and all this thing. But truly, in all honesty, this is an amazing community that just grows with others. There's no other community I know of where somebody like myself, who had I have no acting experience, I have no theater experience, I barely had any streaming experience when I started this whole thing, and being able to,
if you don't mind me interrupting really quick,
go for it.
Everything that you just mentioned, and I think you're just about to say it, honestly, none of the things you just mentioned are actually necessary to telling a story.
Yeah.
Acting background, take it or leave it.
They help.
I mean, it helps. Sure, but you can still be a bad actor. You can still be a very bad actor. Background in improv. Yeah, you can still be a terrible improviser. But it's the love of the story, the love of collaboratively coming together and telling a story that's what's so important.
So beautiful. But the other thing is, I just want to, and this is kind of a shout out to all my guests. This is not just Andy, this is everybody. The fact that you come on my show when I'm so small and I never have to question anything, and there's always this excitement, it's so refreshing. I have to say that. So thank you. And once again, I tell every guest, thank you, because really this might grow into something at one day, but hopefully somebody listens to it and goes, I want to use that for my adventure, or I want to use that for a character in my show, in my game. That's all I ask. So I don't want fame. I don't want fortune. I want people to I want guests to show off their inspiration and allow it to be somebody else's character in their game. Because I just think that's cool. Truthfully, I just think that's really cool that you can be like, and I do ask one thing I ask everybody now that we've started this: if you use a guest in your game, post it up on social media, because I want to hear about it, because I just think it's neat. And you can say who the guest is, what the character is, whatever. It'd be really cool to see. So nerding over, or geeking out over. But we're closing in on our hour. I don't like keeping people over an hour because, everybody is precious of their time. But is there anything you want to give the audience? Any last maybe tips, tricks, something they can use in their game? Maybe world building skills, because it seems like you have an amazing, very thought out world.
So if I can just sort of extend off of something we just touched on, and the idea of just everybody has a story to tell. And yes, there are these, other skills that you can develop in order to tell a story maybe a little bit better. But everybody has a story inside them. Everybody does. And so it's all about, really, at the end of the day. Yes, we play this game where there are elves and there are dwarves and there are undead and vampires and creatures of the abyss and all sorts, and mind flayers. But at the end of the day, we're telling, every single story that we're telling is a human story. And so it comes, and it can all come from your own personal experience, whether you're a dungeon master or a player. And so I would encourage people, if you're interested in doing this, if you're interested in being a player in a game, or if you're interested in taking on the role of a dungeon master, I would just try to find what story is unique to you and what story you want to tell, and to not be afraid to tell it. And I know that really doesn't help people who are intimidated by telling stories. I would just encourage you in that, because I know a lot of people have imposter syndrome over the fact that, well, there's all these podcasts and all of these other people who are doing Dungeons and Dragons, and they're telling their stories, and they have such good production. Who cares? You have a story. You have something that's unique. You are special. Tell that story. Tell that story. Tell it with a bunch of friends, and have them help you tell that story. And through them helping you tell that story, you can also help them tell theirs. And so that is just something that has really helped me, because for me, when I first was starting off, it was very, I guess, easy for me to look at Critical Role and to look at Dimension 20 and be like, wow, this is awesome. I don't really need to create or do anything anymore, because they've got the market cornered on awesomeness. They don't. They don't. They're excellent at what they do.
They are. But
at the end of the day, Matt Mercer and Brendan Lee Mulligan are going to tell stories that Matt Mercer and Brendan Lee Mulligan know about.
And want to tell.
So tell the story that you know about. And that's it.
No, I like that. And that's a good way to finish our night. If you have a story, and everybody does, like he said, everybody has a story. And here's something that a lot of people need to remember. If you're stepping out of your comfort zone to tell the story, and you're surrounded by your friends who are doing the exact same thing, the only thing that's going to come out of that is fun. That's it.
100%.
If y'all are having a good time, it don't matter. 99.9% of people are not going to run a podcast. They're not going to run a stream. They're going to play these stories in the comforts of their own homes with their friends. And guess what? That's where the magic is, because nobody cares other than those people there at the table. If you're all enjoying yourselves, then you're all having a good time.
Thank you for being here, 20 Sides, Jess.
Thank you very much for coming to hang out with us. They were on here a couple of months ago. They got a great podcast out there called 20 Sides. Go check them out on Spotify and all those fun things. The only reason I say Spotify, it's the only one I ever use, but I know there's 1,000 others out there. If you enjoy this, and I'm really hoping that people do continue to enjoy these talks with our guests, I ask kindly that you take a moment in the next couple of days to hop over to our YouTube channel and give us a little love there. That is where all of the Tavern Talks, all of our previous adventures on Sunday nights, all are placed up there. And it just allows us to know that we're doing something that people love. So hopefully we see everybody come back next week. as we have another guest show up. Keep an eye on social media to find out who that is. Every Sunday, I believe we're getting back to our adventure this week, but we've had people out for sickness, con crud, and vacations. So our adventures have been a little slow this starting back up after the holidays. But we're hoping to finish up our the One Ring second edition adventure that we're running right now. And then, of course, if you watch the beginning of the show, get ready because May is a new adventure. We're excited about it. It's going to be in the world of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And without giving
I
up any
really
secrets,
want to play that game. I really do.
we might have to have you come on board because we're stacking a crew up right now.
What publishing
bring
company
on-
makes that?
Magpie Games.
Magpie. Okay. So yeah, I actually have a
Magpie.
friend who is like, they're a dungeon master for, I don't know if you follow them on TikTok at all, but sensationally.me. I think they're a rep for Magpie Games, or they've done stuff at cons for Magpie Games, and they've DM'd.
So I have same thing. I have a wonderful friend. He was on the show a couple months ago. Fire and Dice, Keith Healy. He did great stuff on TikTok, Instagram, all those fun places. But his wife is a professional game master for Magpie Games. Specifically, she kind of focuses on Avatar. So
Fire and Dice, you said?
yeah,
Fire and Dice.
Fire and Dice. Yep. So hopefully, we're going to bring a new story that's never been heard before from Avatar: The Last Airbender's perspective. We're going to be bringing hopefully six cast members. We'll see where that goes yet. And we're going to have a good time. So get ready for that one. That's going to be exciting. A new Dungeon Master. I'll be playing this year, which is exciting because it's something I don't get to do very often. And it'll be a new step for the Misfits because this will be the first long form adventure that I'll be stepping away from GMC. So
Nice.
letting those reins out to others. So we're excited to see where that goes. So for everybody else out there, have a wonderful, wonderful week. Continue to play Dungeons and Dragons and other TTRPGs with your friends, your family, and others all around the world. And we'll see you guys all very soon as you all walk out the door. You close the door behind you. The next time you open it, the respite will not be there as it moves on to a new world. And we'll see you guys all very soon. Have a good night.